We will wait till all four testify, and then we will take any questions. Shabbos Kestenbaum, is that right?
Close enough.
All right, close enough. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
For sure. Well, let me start off firstly by saying that in Jewish theology, when we wake up, we say a prayer that is called Modeh Ani, which is literally translated as thankful am I. And the rabbinic commentators are always puzzled by that phraseology, because it should not be Modeh Ani, thankful am I, but Ani Modeh, I am thankful. And the lesson we learn is before we can say anything, before we go about our day, the very first thing is we must show appreciation. So before I even get to the testimony, I just want to say what a remarkable breath of fresh air this commission and this hearing is. As a individual who registered to vote as a Democrat the day I turned 18, nobody's perfect, we could not get help from the Biden-Harris administration. They did not lift a finger as American students were being denied access to education on their college campuses. And I remember on the campaign trail when President Trump said that religious liberties would be a priority when he gets into office. And this is a testament to the fact that the promises made on the campaign trail have in fact become promises kept. All on this commission are a testament to that. Many of the individuals in this room, like Martin Marks, like Jennifer Korn, like Leo Terrell, like Harmeet Dillon, like Dr. Sebastian Gorka, you have been fighting the fight that I wish the previous administration would have cared to fight as well. So first and foremost, thank you for doing this. The second point I want to say is that in 1790, President George Washington writes a letter to the largest Jewish community in the United States, numbering 25 families in Newport, Rhode Island. And he says, here in the United States, we want you, as descendants of Abraham, to come to our country and practice your faith, because in his own words, quote, bigotry will be granted no sanction and persecution no assistance. And how shocked and how embarrassed and how appalled would President Washington and President Adams and President Jefferson and our founding fathers be today to know that in the 21st century, American students and American citizens were denied access to education because of their religious identity, and the people denying them that access were those who were allegedly in the upper echelons of our society, the most elite, the most progressive, the most well-educated. Why do we care about Harvard and UCLA and Columbia and Penn and all these other morally bankrupt institutions? It's because these are institutions that purport to train the next generation of American leaders. And by and large, they're not wrong. Statistically speaking, it's not an exaggeration at all to state I probably sat in a room at Harvard with a future congressman, a future senator, even a future president of the United States. And if these are America's future policymakers, if these are America's future judges and jurors, if these are America's future authors of the books your kids and grandkids will read, who are taught to hate Western civilization, to hate the founding of our country, and to hate other people based on their religious identity, then this is no longer simply a Jewy issue or an anti-Semitism issue, but this is an issue that cuts at the core of our American democracy, our liberal values, and our Western civilization. And I have to say, even though, of course, this hearing is focused on anti-Semitism, and I will get to that, I promise, I started a timer, but I do want to say that when chants at Oklahoma State of F the Mormons are being sprung out, that is an attack against the Jewish community. It's obviously an attack against the Mormon community, but it's also an attack on every single American. When we have in Long Beach, California, just a week ago, a Catholic school being vandalized to the point whereby they can't even renovate the school anymore, that is not merely an attack on the Catholic community, but it's an attack on the Jewish community, and it's an attack on every single American. And that, unfortunately, brings me to Harvard University. I will, in the interest of time, skip to October 7th, which was not only the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, but it was also a massacre in which 45 American citizens were butchered by the rapist Islamic regime of Hamas. And I just want to quote what was happening on the night of October 7th amongst the most educated, the most elite, and the most progressive of our society. Quote, 2 days after Hamas's deadly attack on Israel last year, senior administrators at Harvard University wrestled with how to respond. Drafting a public statement, they edited out the word violent to describe the attack when a dean complained that it, quote, sounded like assigning blame. They debated whether to explicitly disown a declaration by some Harvard student groups that Israel was responsible for the violence, but ultimately they decided not to. And when they did eventually come out with their statement, it did not, in fact, include the word violent. The largest demonstration I saw at Harvard University was a few days after October 7th, where a masked student gets up in front of 1,000 students and professors, and he says Hamas, which is the only time Hamas was mentioned, is not a terrorist group. We will look upon them as freedom fighters. Who are we to condemn the resistance? And you know what the immediate reaction is of the 1,000 students and professors? Thunderous applause. Not one thing to challenge, to condemn, to walk out of that statement. It is no coincidence, therefore, that 2 weeks after that statement, a Jewish Israeli student was physically assaulted on Harvard Business School. You can watch the footage. It's free on YouTube. The assailants of that attack, one of them was awarded a $65,000 fellowship by Harvard Law School to intern at the Council on American Islamic Relations, which has noted ties to Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, and the other assailant was given the honor of being class marshal at Harvard's graduation. It's no coincidence that 3 weeks after that, an Israeli student at Harvard was told by her professor to leave the classroom because her nationality made other students uncomfortable. It's no coincidence that a month after that, a Jewish American citizen at Harvard was spat on for wearing a yarmulke. It is no coincidence that 3 weeks after that, a Harvard employee vandalized all of our hostage posters, writing on Kfir Bibas, a 9-month-old baby who was kidnapped, quote, "His head is still on, where is the evidence?" Who then wrote on Noah Argamani, another kidnapped Jewish victim, that Jews are best friends with Jeffrey Epstein, who then challenged me to debate him in a secluded underpass as to whether Jews orchestrated 9/11, and then posted a video of him waving a machete with a picture of my face, saying he wants to fight, he's coming after more than blood, and he's coming after the Zionist mafia. And perhaps the icing on the cake is of the dozens of phone calls and emails we sent to Harvard University simply inquiring about his employment status. To this day, they have not once responded to us. It is inconceivable that any other minority group would be treated with the disdain, the disregard, and the contempt that Harvard has historically, routinely, and consistently treated its Jewish student population. But to me, I can forgive and forget. There is one thing I will not forgive and I will not forget, and that was the encampments. Forget about the fact that the students chanted for a globalized intifada at all hours of the day. Forget about the fact that they violated all time, place, and manner restrictions. Forget about the fact that some American Jewish students were actually living on Airbnbs off campus because they didn't want to be confronted each day. Every single time I went to class, I cut through my own campus. Every time I did that, masked students who decided to name themselves safety marshals, when they would see me and other visibly Jewish students approaching, they would take out their phones and they would start following us on our way to class and they would start recording us. And we would ask them to stop, but they would never respond. And we told the president of the university and the president of the United States, but again, his mental acuity was questionable at the time. We told him that American students were being followed on their way to class as a result of their religious identity. And not only did the president of the university, Alan Garber, who is still the president of the university today, not only did he never respond to our concerns, he actually told the encampment leaders, if you agree to pack up your tents, we will allow you to meet with the Harvard Management Corporation, which oversees Harvard's $59 billion endowment, to discuss divestment from Israel. If you agree to pack up your tents, we will allow you to meet with senior Harvard faculty to discuss the establishment of a Palestinian Study Center. And of the hundreds of students who took part in the encampments, who violated internal Harvard policy and followed American students on their way to class, 0 were expelled, 0 were suspended, or 0 were disciplined in any measurable way. The message that Alan Garber told American students was, if you call for an intifada loud enough, and if you follow American Jewish students long enough, and if you vandalize enough private property, at one point the encampment students at Harvard University tried using bolt cutters to try to break open the locks on Harvard's gates. Says President Alan Garber, if you do all of those things, we will grant you a seat at the table, which is why we filed a civil rights lawsuit against the university. We are the first lawsuit of its kind pertaining to the civil rights violations of Jewish students on a college campus to be allowed to go to trial. I'm very proud of the fact that there are currently 7 lawsuits brought by Jewish students across this country that have cited Kestenbaum v. Harvard as legal precedent. And as it pertains to recommendations, because I know I'm out of time, any institution of higher learning that violates the civil rights of any group based on gender, based on religion, based on ethnicity, it does not entitle itself to American taxpayer funding. If you truly want to help, and I know all of you do, especially our president, you would continue to do what you currently are doing, which is ensuring that Harvard University does not receive a penny of American taxpayer money in perpetuity, ever, ever again. You would ensure that any institution that violates the rights of Christians or Jews, any religious group, does not afford themselves the right to American taxpayer money. It is that simple. We would ensure that students who come to this country who are not American citizens, who do not believe in the values of the West, who, like Mahmoud Khalil, call for the eradication of Western civilization, are not allowed within 50 feet of this country. They are not Americans. They do not stand by American ideals, and we have no obligation to bring them into our country. And I will end by how I opened, which is an attack on one Christian is an attack on one Jew, and an attack on one Jew is an attack on one Christian. We are in this together. And post Charlie Kirk, who is a remarkable role model, not just for me, but for millions of young men and women across this country, country, there has been a dearth of role models, of people who tell young people the value, the importance, the meaningfulness of having religion in their lives. And I would encourage as well that this commission seriously look into the ways that we can encourage Gen Z men in particular to be better as it pertains to their religious affiliation. America was founded predominantly by Christians, by a shared Hebraic tradition and Judeo-Christian values, and I know as an Orthodox Jew, America would be a much stronger and better country if more young Christian men went to church, if more young Christian men studied and learned the New Testament and the Old Testament, and if young Christian men believed and learned the values of and teachings of Jesus. So I want to thank all of you for doing what the previous administration did not do and recognizing the fundamental importance of religious liberties in our country.
Thank you. Our next witness, Coach Bruce Pearl.